always talk about the assessment, but not now, not when we are starting. Anyway, it's Wuthering Heights, everyone. So the class is being recorded, like I told you. Let me share the slides, and we are on our way. It's very slow, I would like you to bear it up with me. And obviously, there is nothing I can do about it if it's the system. Okay. Yeah. So can you see that? Can you see the slides now? Say something.
Not yet. It's a little dark.
We can't see the screen.
You can now, right? Can you now? Can you see the screen?
No, we can't.
No, doctor, not yet.
Right, let's wait and see. How about now? I think you can now, right?
Still no.
Very strange. No. No.
Still not working.
Not yet. I mean, what's wrong? No, just wait. Hello? Are we any better? Can you see anything now?
No.
No.
We still can't see.
Very strange. I don't know what's happening. And this is wasting our time, obviously. Right, anyway, at least I can see the slides. Okay. So I am sure over time they will appear. No, they appear in front of my eyes, and the screen is shared. For some reason, you cannot see the screen. Okay, type anyway. So it's chapter 6, everyone. It's Emily Brontë again, and it's Wuthering Heights. This time around, we're not talking about home, we're talking about abroad. We started talking about abroad last time, and if you still remember, abroad is about is whatever is not home. Home in the sense of security and safety, home in the sense of this typical attitudes towards women as being the guardians of the house, as being the angels in the house, and nothing else. So we're moving away from that. We're talking about the idea of abroad in its broadest sense in the sense that we're going to be talking about more than just the content. We're going to talk about the genre itself, whether it's one genre or a number of genres. We're going to talk about the narrative, whether it's one straightforward narrative or a multiplicity of narratives and a multiplicity of narrators and all these kinds of things. So it's a approach that we're doing, and with approach, the associations are wild, the associations are wide, the associations are even uncanny in the sense that you have the strangest and weirdest things happening. You also on the level of the content, the storyline itself, the different generations, and also on the level of form. The way the novel is written is obviously different. I mean, people are used to, very straight forward stories. You normally have love, love interest, and people, of course, meet difficulties. But towards the end, there is a disentanglement of all the entanglements that you have read about and you have witnessed over the chapters of them. This time around, it's more complicated and it's more complex than just that. Okay. This chapter, the focus is on the idea of approach. There is going to be this, concern with the issues of genre, whether we have one single genre or the novel is a cross-generic enterprise. And we're going to also explore and expand on the concept of the reader. Remember, we at one point we spoke about the different ways the novel was received, and we said that the novel people at the time acknowledged the creative power of the writer, and they even compared her to an artistic dramatist, but they never failed to also talk about what they see or what they saw as shortcomings. The idea that it is rooted and soaked in violence, the fact that it is full of perhaps horror atmospheres that would link it to traditional Gothic novels, novels where you have a great deal of violence. There is a great deal of dehumanization leveled, especially practiced, especially against women. We will at one point have to make a distinction between the critical reception of the novel and the popular reception of the novel. Critical means that we're focusing on the critics and the reviewers and how they looked at the novel. Popular means that we're looking at how people, normal people, the layman or the lay reader receive the novel. Critical reviews were all in the 19th century when the novel was published. The popular appeal of the novel is a 20th century, phenomenon, and it has to do with the so many cinematic adaptations of the novel, where there was focus on the romantic aspects of the novel. Heathcliff and Catherine falling in love, and of course, with the cinema, the focus is normally on the box office, what brings money to the movie, and what brings money normally has to do with love relationships and romances and all these kinds of things. We'll talk about that when the time is right. Um, this is something that we also did last time. Spoke about the Lockwood as a representative of the South and of London, and the rest of the Wuthering Heights inhabitants as representation of the North and its values. And we spoke about the South as being more educated, more civilized. Spoke about the North as and its inhabitants as being villagers, as being rustic, a little bit, blunt in their answers. They don't have the civility that you would expect of people. Will have that. Of course, when Lockwood goes to the north, he is obviously going to whatever is approved for him. And of course, the inhabitants of Wuthering Heights in the north are looking at Lockwood as a representation of whatever is also approved. He is as foreign to them as it gets. Okay, so you have also the contrasting worlds of Wuthering Heights on the one hand and the Grange, when we spoke about the Grange as being also a place that can give you a sense of peace and a sense of security, while Wuthering Heights would give you a sense of whatever is strange, whatever is weird. So to Lockwood, the north is strikingly other, a foreign place. To the inhabitants of the north, Wuthering Heights people, London and the south are equally foreign, like we agreed. Even within the north, we have this sharp contrast between Wuthering Heights and the Grange in terms of who lives where and what kind of qualities they have. According to a critic by the name of Queenie Leaves, Wuthering Heights is home to a wholesome, primitive, and natural society, pitted against the overdeveloped artificial culture of the Grange. So the Grange would represent whatever is civil, whatever is civilized, and whatever is polite and decent. While Wuthering Heights, the place would represent nature, primitiveness, and they are pitted against each other. Again, why? Why is Brontë doing that? Perhaps she had issues with the presentation and the representation of the British society or the English society as being civil, as being free of issues and problems, and she's trying to give us a different picture, and this different picture is obviously very ruthless. Perhaps she's trying to ruthlessly or ruthlessly, she's trying to ruthlessly demystify the Victorian notion of the family. What is the Victorian notion of the family? It's a family that is pious, God-fearing, peaceful, safe and security, free of social conflict. And this is obviously not happening in Wuthering Heights, and obviously and according to Terry Eggleton, the famous Marxist critic, according to him, perhaps Emily Brontë is making a statement. She's trying to say that there is obviously more to the English society than just portraying it as peaceful, as civilized, and as civilizing. There is obviously more than that. There is obviously more to the Victorian family than the image that is given to us as being pious and peaceful. There was violence. There were social conflicts of all sorts, and there were kind of miseries and sufferings, especially among the poor. When you even look at the character of Heathcliff and how he looks, remember he looks different. Everybody is typically English, where you expect the typical English people to be white, to be blonde. He is obviously different. He is bringing this idea of approach to the novel, whether Emily Brontë is presenting him this way in order to say something different, in order to make a statement about perhaps the oppression of the poor, the oppression of other races, or whether she's presenting him to just say that there are other races and perhaps we are better than them. And it's up, and the interpretations are up for grabs. People have a right to what they think she wanted to say, provided that they justify what they say. So Heathcliff is the most obvious representative of abroad in the context of the local and domestic world of the novel. He enters the domestic scene from another world, from the streets of Liverpool. We're agreed on that. Of course, we know how Mr. Earnshaw brought him to the world of Wuthering Heights, the world of the novel, and the world and the world of the people who live in Wuthering Heights. And of course, he was different. He presents, or he is the first one to kind of introduce this idea of approach with its negative senses. Even Earnshaw, when at one point he was caught commenting on Heathcliff and his life in Wuthering Heights with them, and he would say that he is either a gift of God or a gift from the devil, or perhaps he came from the devil. So you have this contested origin of Heathcliff, of course, and this contested origin, whether he is good news or bad news, whether he has origins or not, whether he is English or not, all these contested ideas would contribute to the idea of approach, because home is about straightforwardness, home is about directness, which we don't in the character of Heathcliff, of course. You would look at how Mrs. Earnshaw looked, Heathcliff. She would refer to him as a gypsy brat, and of course, the negative associations of the gypsies, those who live on the margins of society. They are not very well appreciated by the rest of society. They are marginalized. They don't have access to good education. They normally work in jobs that are not quite welcome by the rest of society. They dance, they practice magic, and all these kinds of. So to link Heathcliff to gypsies, this is obviously not a praise. It's a criticism and a denigration. Have negative views of him. Nobody's giving him the benefit of the doubt, again, for the simple reason that they are all white, and he is not very white. Mr. Linton, for example, would refer to him as a Lascar, and a Lascar is an American or a Spanish castaway. those who used to live on board ships, and they had very little access to food and everything. Again, this gypsiness is um, mentioned again by Mr. Lockwood. At one point, they would link him to Irish immigrants. At the time, there was this very famous Irish famine where thousands of Irish people, died of hunger, and some of them had to flee the country in order for better prospects. And then there is this link to this famine. People, one of the interpretation that this guy might be an Irish immigrant, or his family at least were Irish immigrants. That would explain the why that he's not, and then that would explain why he's not very white. They would also refer to him metaphorically as an angel of revenge on behalf of a formidable collective of oppressed ethnic groups. And somehow they are linking him to the oppressed poor or the oppressed ethnic groups, whether inside England or outside, those who were dehumanized by the British Empire. And they say interpreters and critics are going as far as considering Heathcliff as an angel of revenge. Even Nellie, of course, is the main narrator. She is confused about the origin of Heathcliff, to the extent that she says that he doesn't, of course, look British or English, and he would fit more into the category of being perhaps the son of the Emperor of China, and also the son of an Indian queen. So again, this confusion of countries and of origins would tell you a great deal about what kind of character he is, and would point straight to the idea of approved in the novel. So at a basic level, Heathcliff represents the experience of society's marginalized uh, and dispossessed individuals. The fact that people are saying perhaps Bronte is trying to say that at one point, and this can be also a cautionary story where Bronte is trying to tell mainstream English people that they have to take care, otherwise the marginalized and the dispossessed elements of society will revolt against them. Um, and this is very serious, of course. Um, Again, among those marginalized and dispossessed would be the Irish peasants, the Irish people who were under occupation by the British Empire, and of course, they were dehumanized and marginalized. And the Great Famine, which took place between 1845 and 1852, is a witness to this kind of dehumanization and this kind of disposition and marginalization. It seems that Emily Brontë is kind of trying to warn the English society of just that. Okay, so there is a great deal of mystery about Heathcliff. Everything is obviously strange about this guy. starting from his origins, and then over his whereabouts. Remember, at one point he would leave um, Wuthering Heights, the whole estate, and disappear for 2 years or 3 years, and then he comes back rich. It's all mysterious, and that would add to the approved aspect of the novel. Do you have any questions?
No, doctor.
Okay. So we're talking about this idea of specificity when it comes to the character of Heathcliff. And it's this very lack of specificity that opens up a wealth of possible connections. And that has been explored in recent post-colonial and cultural criticism. Again, the focus would be on Heathcliff, not just as a racial other, but of the yet more topical category of atari. They went as far as interpreting the character of Heathcliff and categorize him as a terrorist. So he's not only a foreign, he's not only other, he is now equated with terrorists. And then we come to the idea of the uncanny. Studies of the uncanny were widespread in the 19th century, especially, late 19th century. You would have writers who address whatever is occult, whatever is strange, and whatever is weird, as opposed to straightforward writers who are only interested in the family life of couples, of love interests, promoting the peacefulness of society and its prosperity and everything. So the uncanny has to do with whatever is strange and whatever is weird. So do we have that in the novel? Yes, of course. The concept of the uncanny is central to Wuthering Heights, absolutely. So how would you describe things that are uncanny? You qualify things and say that they are uncanny if they disturb whatever is familiar, whatever the sense of familiar and familiarity with us. And whatever is familiar would suggest whatever is known, whatever has to do also with the family. And whatever has to do with the family would link us to the idea of home with its stated pluses when we talk about security, when you talk about even wealth and comfort and all these kinds of things. So the uncanny has an immediate contrasting association with what is strange and unfamiliar. And whatever is strange and whatever is familiar would link us to the idea of approved. Again, I think by now you would have read the novel. And if I ask you to pin down or to pick uncanny situations in the novel, you will come up with a bunch. Not least, or perhaps on top of them, would be the character of Heathcliff, the strange relationships between and among the characters, even on the level of the genre itself, on the level of form, when we get to know that the narrative is complex, when we get to know that we have more than one genre. These are all features and landmarks and of the whatever is uncanny in the novel. Okay, so what is in terms of form, for example, you have this confusion between genres and artistic forms. At one point, you may think that the novel has realistic storytelling, but at another point, you would have fantastical modes of romantic narration. So this confusion would also add to the uncanny enterprise in the novel. What other uncanny, situations and examples? Look at the apparition of Catherine, for example. This is also uncanny because we don't have ghosts in real life. So the notion of home is linked to the familiar, while abroad, or the notion of abroad is linked to the unfamiliar. But they do coexist in the novel. They do exist together and they are interrelated. Abroad threatens the familiar in the home and adds to the interaction of the realism and romance. Again, if we look at examples of the uncanny, the ghosts of Catherine and Heathcliff would be an example. The apparition or the ghost outside Luke's window and Heathcliff's vampire gaze are examples of the uncanny, and whatever is also grotesque. Hareton's playing with the poppies and hanging them all on the rope is another example of whatever is uncanny and whatever is strange. You would feel that Wuthering Heights in general, the house would seem haunted. With the description and what you read about the house, you get the feeling that this is a haunted and cursed place. It's not a normal place. You wouldn't compare him to the Grange, for example. Um, Heathcliff and his otherness is also part of the uncanny project of the novel. Again, you would think of the novel and its hybridity, the fact that it has a mix of forms and modes, that would also be strange. And if it's strange and unprecedented and unheard of, that would also add to the uncanny atmosphere. The novel is also described as, as inheriting, signs of the grotesque. The word grotesque means something that is out of shape, out of joint, something that is disformed. When you have those very strange Gothic castles where disformed animals are kind of carved or built on those castles. These are examples of the grotesque. So do we have that? Yes. When you compare Wuthering Heights and how it looks to the Grange, for example, you would feel how part of the grotesque is Wuthering Heights. Again, you would look at the characters and how they behave. You would look at Heathcliff and how he looks. So there are certainly numerous grotesque elements in Wuthering Heights. One of them would be the apparition at Lookwood's window, Heathcliff's vampire and frightful lifelike gaze of exultation in death, or his behavior during his final encounter with Catherine, when he seems to Nellie as a creature of another species. So you would always link him to this element of the grotesque when he is angry, when he is revengeful, and he is always angry and he is always revengeful. Um, are you sure you cannot see the slides? You can't see them yet.
I
Right?
can't see them.
You can see
It
them.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So this is an example of the grotesque. Can you see this creature?
Yes.
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously we're not talking about a straightforward animal. You cannot recognize the animal and say, for example, this is a dog, or this is a frog, or this is this, or this is that. Right? Can you do that? No, you cannot, right?
No, it's difficult.
Yes, okay. It's difficult and what? Give me an adjective that would describe your feeling towards this creature.
Strange.
Yani even
Or
worse.
maybe shocking.
Shocking and even worse. Disgusting. Can I describe it as disgusting?
Scary.
Yes.
Yeah, scary, disgusting. Okay, so you put all these adjectives together and come up with the idea of grotesque. So grotesque means that you're not, if you're building something, you're not building it the right way. If you're forming something, you're not forming it. If you're writing a novel, you're not writing it the right way. But it's not, with the grotesque, you have all those feelings of weirdness, strangeness, in a very negative way. So, do we have elements of the grotesque in the novel? Absolutely, and we've been talking about them, and on top of them would be Heathcliff and his looks, his mysterious behavior, his violence, and all these kinds of things. This idea of the grotesque is not new. We have seen it in novels during the time and even prior to the time of Emily Brontë, and there are those guesses that she could have read that in her lifetime, and that would also be in translation because Hoffman was German and The Sandman was written in German. Excuse me. So again, the grotesque is part of the uncanny and part of the uncanny project that Emily Brontë has set up. Again, it's all negative, it's all suspect, and there have been a number of psychoanalytic studies on the novel in general, on different characters and stuff like that. Again, whatever we say about the uncanny in terms of definition would apply to the novel. The idea of whatever is secretive and whatever is hidden, and we have that in the novel. So again, the uncanny is about our depraved nature as human beings, as given rise to in Wuthering Heights. Okay, Wuthering Heights and romantic poetry. Romantic poetry in some of its aspects is about whatever is strange, whatever is wild, whatever is primitive. And we do have that. So we're talking about romantic poetry in the novel in terms of themes, whether those are showcased in the novel or not, and we do have that. And also in terms of the language that Emily Brontë is using. Emily Brontë was known also as a poet and a good one. So she used that. She employed her poetic talent in the novel. Whether we're talking about how she uses the language, even or even the themes and the ideas that she introduced. So it's poetry that we're having. It's similar to poetry. The language is similar to poetry. And what kind of poetry? It is romantic poetry. The romantic part comes and gets reflected in the themes and the ideas, whatever is strange, whatever is wild, whatever is primitive and natural. So from the moment of its publication, Wuthering Heights invited comparisons with forms outside the novel and its chief home genre, the romance. So we'll talk about the romance uh, and how its elements are reflected in the novel. Of course, romance has different interpretations. Emily Brontë has also been frequently described as a writer whose work has its true home not in prose fiction but in poetry. Okay, so if she is a poet and if she is a romantic poet, she must have been influenced by some romantic poets like Shelley and Coleridge. These are romantic poets. Again, when you talk about poetry, you talk about a mode or a way of expressing that would kind of reflect the different moods and seasons of nature. Again, her obsession with the landscape is part of this influence, of this romantic influence. Remember when we spoke about the romantics, and we said that they celebrate nature, outside nature, and it's not the nature of it's not gardens that they are interested in. It's in the wild nature, in the nature of the countryside. And we do have that in the moors of Wuthering Heights, as you have seen and noticed. So the novel uses poetic language, especially in its description of Heathcliff and of the love story between him and Catherine. Again, the elegiac. Elegiac means elegy. Elegy is a kind of poem that gives us, sad words and lines about dead people, and the ending of the novel was like that, and that would also link it to romanticism and would make it very romantic. Again, Bronte would use rhythmic patterns and repetitions to achieve musicality. So her prose is more or less poetic. She uses diction that we only use in poetry. Again, we would also move to the idea of drama and the fact that the novel is very dramatic, dramatic in its pronouncements as enacted by the different characters, especially Heathcliff. Again, whatever is imaginary would link you to whatever is romantic. um, of course, you have this link to between the Bible and because the language of the Bible is also very poetic. They use words and expressions, I mean the writers of the Bible, that we don't normally use in normal life. And even the ideas in the Bible are all, some of them are very revolutionary, and some of them would link it to romantic endeavors and romantic poets. Again, if we are going to, kind of count or catalog the romantic elements and the romantic affinities in the novel, you would have the love story, which is you have this romantic union between Catherine and Heathcliff. And it's not only physical or this physical admiration, it has to do with souls and spirits living forever in the natural world. And of course, we have examples of just that. When Catherine says that I'm Heathcliff, for example, in this case, she's echoing Shelley. Shelley is, of course, a romantic poet. She's echoing Shelley's poem, Epi it's a difficult poem to pronounce. I mean, the title, in which one of the characters is telling the other, "I'm not thine, I am part of thee." So if I'm not you, I am part of you. Now, of course, it has this contradiction to it, but a romantic contradiction, if you like. You would also link the novel to the play Manfred, which also has features and echoes that would link it to Wuthering Heights. I mean, the fact that the main character looks exactly like Heathcliff, behaves exactly like Heathcliff. So Heathcliff's sense of loss after Catherine's death makes him a romantic hero rather than a romantic hero in the sense that he would feel sad, disturbed, revengeful, resentful of the world. And these are all echoes of the romantic hero always and everywhere. Again, we talk about nature and the evocation of nature, and this is also very romantic. Again, we spoke about that, the union between Heathcliff and Catherine, very romantic, and it's out of this world even because the relationship would go beyond life. If you still remember at the end what he says about her and the fact that he wants her to be with him in any shape or form, and even her, Catherine herself, if you still remember, at one point she would say that she was in the middle of this love relationship with Heathcliff, and at one point she would have a dream, and in the dream she dies and she goes to heavens. But she didn't like she didn't like it there, obviously for obvious reason. The fact that her other half, her companion and her lover, was still alive and not dead. She didn't like it there, and she started to kind of weep and weep until she was thrown again into earth. So again, it's not just another affair or another love relationships. It's more than just that, and that would link it to romantic poetry and romanticism in general. Again, I'm Heathcliff. So Catherine's I'm Heathcliff echoes a line from Shelley, I am not thine, I am a part of thee. Heathcliff's invocations of Catherine, come and hear me, be with me always, take any form, drive me mad. And that would also, remind us of Manfred and his speech to his dead sister in Byron's verse drama, Manfred. Spoke about that. Do you have any questions so far?
No, doctor, thank you.
No, doctor, thank you.
What would link the novel to Romanticism still would be the idea of evil in the world, and the fact that human beings are innocent and are pure until they start dealing with each other in life. So naturally, you are a good human being until you start to be aware of stuff. You start to have dealings. So you have this corruption or corrupt element. If you still remember when we spoke about Heathcliff, until he was treated badly by, what's the name, Handel? Who treated him, and the son of Earnshaw, what's his name?
Henley.
Henley. Henley or Henley. Remember, he was fine. He was treating everybody in a decent and a nice way. Those thoughts of revenge and those thoughts of resentment came to him when people started to alert him to his unknown origins and the fact that he doesn't look like them. So we have this distortion of innate affections. People love each other. People live in peace with each other until they start to perhaps go to school and interact and have those human ideas. If you're natural, if you're born without having those dictates of society, you're fine. But once you start being institutionalized by society, you have to do this and you don't have that, you change and you become different and you become artificial and you become also corrupt. This is happening in the novel. And these views are, by the way, romantic views. That's why we're saying that is a debt and influence from Romanticism. So the romantic elements can be summed up in the following. We talk about poetic language, talk about repetitions, musicality, and cadence. When we talk about dramatic monologues and pantheism means that you, as a human being, think that you're part of nature. And you're part of nature, in this case, whether you are in heaven or on earth, it wouldn't make much difference because you find God and you find heavens everywhere, whether in the heavens or on earth. Of course, the love story, the romance, and of course, the influence of childhood memories, whether those childhood memories are good and they keep up with you, or bad. If they are bad, they may change you into a totally different person. So distortion of human nature is one of the central aspects of Romanticism, and this is we have seen in the novel. That can be felt in the brutal treatment of Heathcliff as a child, which makes him the violent, revengeful grown-up that we now know. So the influence of childhood on the formation of character is one of the main ideas in Romantic poetry, and we have found echoes of that in the novel. Again, we spoke about pantheism and the fact that you can find God anywhere, whether in the heavens or in nature or in your home, in the relationships that you may have with people. Again, there are echoes of that, when we spoke about Heathcliff and how he wants Catherine, who already died, in any form or any shape. And also when Catherine goes to heaven in the dream and she's not happy there. So you have this reversal of expectations, the fact that you expect that heaven would be a nice place for Catherine, but it is not, because she is a pantheistic creature who believes that it doesn't matter where she is in order to be happy and stuff.
Doctor,
Yes.
can you call this metaphysical?
Yeah, the ideas are metaphysical because they are not very direct, because they are not, very common. Yeah, I call them metaphysical in this sense. In the metaphysical, I think we did at one point we did poetry, metaphysical poetry. And we said that what is metaphysical about this kind of poetry when we did John Donne's, was it The Fly or The Flea? The Flea. Remember this poem? In
Yes,
AA?
doctor.
Yes.
Metaphysical optimism. Withered. Yeah.
We said that this kind of poetry is referred to as metaphysical because of the strange ideas that it has. Again, you may refer to the novel as being metaphysical in this sense. It does not address straightforward, home-inspired Victorian ideals. Again, people would look at Wuthering Heights as a Marxist statement, as a statement by Emily Brontë. This was obviously before Marxism became what it is now, a very important ideology. And Marxism is normally about the clash or the clashes between classes, the fact that you have aristocracy and you also have capitalism and people who have money, and people who are down at the bottom of the social ladder, who are poor, who don't have access to life necessities. According to Marcus, Marcus is obviously the founder of Marxism. We are going to always have this kind of conflict between those who have and those who do not have. Again, after Marx came a lot of followers and a lot of Marx students who took his ideas and they started to kind of apply them to all the aspects of life, including literature. So Wuthering Heights shares the style of a Bildungsroman. It's a Bildungsroman, which is obviously another kind of another literary model, and it's called the novel of education. And the novel of education is about the protagonist who comes from afar. He or she is very poor, and then he starts to climb the social ladder until he becomes something. He starts off ignorant, he starts off innocent, and over time he matures and he has knowledge at the end, perhaps wealth as well as knowledge. So this is called the novel of education, where the character gets educated on different levels in terms of awareness, in terms of mistakes that he pays for, mistakes that he atones for, and learns from. But this is also applicable to the novel. But who would be the protagonist here in this Bildungsroman? Is it going to be Heathcliff or Catherine herself? For mainstream readers like me and you, the first and the only choice for a protagonist for a Bildungsroman would be Heathcliff. But for feminist critics who believe that women, there is obviously more to women than just being at home and playing those small roles in the house. Those feminist critics believe that a better fit for a Bildungsroman's protagonist would be Catherine herself, because she, on a number of levels, she proved more active, she proved more aggressive, she proved more revolutionary than Heathcliff, given the fact that she was a woman in the Victorian society, and of course the Victorian society didn't expect much of her. What she did was very revolutionary, and she had to kind of defy societal expectations. That would qualify her to be the protagonist in a Bildungsroman. Again, when we talk about Bildungsroman, we talk about this rise of the individual from a poor state or a dehumanized state to a better state. And of course, on the journey, because it's a metaphorical journey, he learns a lot. So if we apply that to the character of Heathcliff, we're going to find that the Heathcliff that we start with is not the Heathcliff that we end with. But it's perhaps what? It's a Bildungsroman that is turned on its head. You normally have the journey and you have the character moving to whatever is good and whatever is better. But in our case, Heathcliff starts good when he was a child, but he turned into an evil individual at the end. So it's a Bildungsroman in the case of Heathcliff, but it is turned on its head. Who can be a real fit for a Bildungsromans? Like I said, Catherine can be a better fit because she moved. She was revolutionary. She was very daring. She defied society and its expectations, and these are real accomplishments, given the fact that she was a lady and a woman at a time when women were not valued that much. Again, like I said, the novel can showcase examples of issues that were contemporary, that were active and hot at the time. the idea of mercantile competition, the Irish immigration, the social marginalization, and also the gender marginalization. Social marginalization means that you have classes, and you have people who are poor, and you have people who are rich, you have the proletariat, and you also have um, the capitalists. You also have, like I said, gender marginalization when you get to know that women were marginalized, were not given what they deserve. So the novel showcases all of that. Again, if you would like to talk about psychology, it's there. Then we're talking about this idea that people inside have two forces. You have evil forces and you have good forces, and they are obviously at war with each other. And in order to emerge victorious as an individual, a normal individual, without issues, without psychological scars, you have to have control. You have to maintain a balance between those two forces within you, the evil and the good forces. Do we have that? Yes, we have that. Look at the character of Heathcliff, who cannot obviously maintain this balance between whatever is good and whatever is bad inside him. And obviously, the bad would overcome the good, and this is what we get all through. So the mind was envisaged as consisting of competing faculties or forces, and you have to exercise self-control. So achieving a balance between the forces within each individual, that would be your real achievement. Whether some of the characters manage to do that, that's the big question. Okay, so according to a critic by the name of Sally Shuttleworth, Heathcliff is an imaginative projection of what may happen if the energy of the oppressed is harnessed and controlled in the service of aggressive individualism and upward mobility. She is talking about the novel in very political terms. She's saying that unless we kind of harness and control the different dynamics and the different forces in society, the likelihood that there is going to be aggression and there is going to be violence is very high. Again, she would equate that with the idea of upward mobility, the fact that people start off poor, start off non-entities, but they have this drive to become better. So unless we are very careful with the movement, unless we are very, kind of vigilant about the move, the likelihood that violence erupts is very high. So Heathcliff's psychology might be understood as a microcosm of aggressive capitalism approach. So he himself, Heathcliff, in one of the interpretations, would be an example of aggressive capitalism approach. He represents approach because of how he looks before of his disputed origins, and he also represents capitalism because he went away for 3 years, and when he came back, he was a capitalist, somebody who has wealth and has property. And of course, you know how aggressive he was. So capitalism is very aggressive. Heathcliff is a capitalist, and he happens to be very violent and aggressive. He is a representation of aggressive capitalism abroad. People would also compare Heathcliff to Bertha. Bertha is um, the wife of the main character in Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. I'm sure you're familiar with Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is a novel by Charlotte Bronte, and of course Charlotte is the sister of Emily Brontë. Jane Eyre is obviously the nanny. She is the manager of the house. She gets married. No, she falls in love with the owner of the house. He doesn't tell her that he has a wife, and this wife is mad and is being locked in the attic on top of the house. So unknowingly, she falls in love with him, and they decide to get married. Of course, she gets to know what's happening, and obviously on the day of the wedding or something, Bertha, the wife, the mad wife, would set fire in the entire house, and this male owner of the house is going to get injured. So people started to kind of interpret and explain why Bertha may have done that. And they would always refer to the fact that Bertha was marginalized, muhammasha. She was socially marginalized. She was oppressed by her own husband. Instead of perhaps, nursing her back to health, he is locking her in the attic on top of the house. And as an act of rebellion and an act of revolution, she is going to set fire on the entire house. So they are comparing Bertha to Heathcliff, and they are saying Heathcliff is another Bertha. He is also treated very unfairly. He is being marginalized. Everybody's talking about his disputed origins. Everybody's making fun of him. And of course, you don't expect him to kind of bear and grin, like they say. No, he will take revenge like Bertha did. So Bertha's suppressed energies erupt in uncontrolled revolution. Heathcliff's in controlled revenge. He took revenge, but what is different is that this was, organized and controlled revenge, one step at a time. So unlike Bertha, Heathcliff is not mad. He is perfectly sane. And we know that he's not mad. He is only revengeful. He has this monomania. He is mad only in one aspect, in this notion of monomania or partial insanity. Again, it has to do with how he cannot live without Catherine. He has this divided self. He has those conflicting energies within him, but he's not mad. Again, people would also compare Heathcliff to Frankenstein. Again, Frankenstein was suppressed. He felt dismayed and resentful of his creator and what he did with him. And the end result would, if you still remember, would be that he started to slaughter and kill whoever came his way. So again, this perversion of natural affections are caused by ill treatment. When you treat somebody ill, especially at the early stages of their life. Heathcliff has a whole program of revenge. Remember, we're saying that unlike Bertha, he was not mad. He has a program of revenge. We even said that he is in control, right? Still remember. Again, we're having this image or this one interpretation that would link the whole play to the lashing out as imperialism. According to some people, Wuthering Heights is an extended critique of imperialism. Critique means that it attacks imperialism, and imperialism is when a country wants to extend beyond its borders, like the British Empire when it has colonies in India, in Egypt, in North America. This is imperialism, and of course, they don't do that through, let's say, books that they send to people, or they don't do that by showering people with good things and they give them cake. No, they go and attack and invade and kill. So this would leave resentment and feelings of revenge among the natives, the people of those colonies and those countries. So Wuthering Heights as can be a critique of imperialism, where Heathcliff would be the one who is taking revenge. Again, that would also tell us what would happen if the suppressed power of the savage outsiders were unleashed. So they are describing the people who live in the colonies, the natives in India and North America, as savage because they are not educated. If you keep dehumanizing them, if you keep stealing and robbing their treasures, if you keep treating them in a negative way, they will attack you. They will, at one point, kind of take arms against you. They are going to, kind of kill you if they can. So the savage outsiders here are Heathcliff, and of course he has been suppressed for so long, and we have seen the reaction. His reaction was very revengeful and very aggressive and very violent. Again, perhaps Heathcliff's program of revenge might be a reflection of Victorian anxieties about the uncanny and the uncanny potential of both dispossessed classes and maltreated races. It is as if Emily Brontë, who lived in the Victorian age, is showing, is kind of uncovering and exploring those Victorian anxieties. People are anxious that perhaps if we keep treating other nations and other countries the way we do, which is full of unfair treatment, the end result would be that we will have people like Heathcliff, who we have suppressed for so long, revolting against us and killing us and taking revenge from us. Remember, there was a great deal of talk about heavens, pantheism, remember? And we have examples of that. So the novel, as you can see, has everything. It's up for grabs. Every critic can come up with ideas and can tell us about. You yourself can come up with your ideas about being in the 21st century, where you may have different ideas that may apply to the now. Remember when I told you about Catherine and her dream? If I were in heaven, I should be extremely miserable. This is Catherine talking to Nellie. I dreamt once that I was there. Heaven didn't seem to be my home, and I broke my heart with weeping to come back to earth. And the angels were so angry that they flung me out into the middle of the heath on the top of Wuthering Heights, where I woke sobbing for joy. So she was very miserable. She was all the time weeping when she was in heaven. But when she was thrown into the top of Wuthering Heights to earth, she was happy. Again, this is a reference to religion and theology. Today I am within sight of my heaven. This is whom? This is Heathcliff talking about Catherine. Catherine, of course, is dead, and he is a few yards away from her tomb and grave, and he's saying that I am within sight of my heaven. According to him, heaven here is not the usual or the traditional heaven that we are all familiar with. Heaven here is Catherine herself. So the afterlives of the protagonists. So this is also a reversal of not roles. This is a reversal of expectations. So everybody knows where heaven is and where earth is, where paradise is and where hell is. With Emily Brontë, it's different. She locates the afterlives of her protagonists at home on earth rather than in heaven, which is, again, if you still remember, a very pantheistic view of life and death. Remember when I told you that pantheism is about finding God and finding heaven everywhere, in nature, earth, in heaven, on the trees, everywhere. And this is obviously contradicting with the conventionally Christian view of heaven and hell. And this is also very uncanny. So her novel fuses distinctions between home and abroad, the domestic and the romantic, transcendent. The domestic and the romantic transcendent cohabit. The dead walk abroad in the landscape they frequented while living. It's all confusion. It's all, kind of defying our expectations. So it's heterodox theology, not orthodox theology. Orthodox means that you know where heaven is and where hell is. It's a different kind of relationship of heaven and hell. Again, we have examples of just that in the novel, and in this case and in this sense, we have a systematic reversal of biblical hierarchies that goes well beyond the more obvious satire. So, according to biblical hierarchies, you have the heavens, and you know where they are, and then you have earth, and you have hell, right? But what we see in the novel is a totally different thing, where, according to Catherine, heaven, in terms of comfort, in terms of love, is not the traditional heaven that we're familiar with. Her heaven is on earth. The same applies to Heathcliff. According to him, Catherine is his God. Catherine is his heaven, and Catherine is dead, and Catherine is on earth. Again, what gives rise to all these ideas, those systematic reversal of narratives and hierarchies, what gives rise to that would be the publication of a book called The Mad Woman in the Attic by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gobar in 1979. The Mad Woman in the Attic, this is the name of the book, in which those two critics are going to interpret the novel in a totally different fashion, focusing on women and their role and how those Victorian women writers are trying to subvert the dominant traditions of authoritative texts. By authoritative texts, of course, we mean the Bible. So in the Bible, you know where heaven is, it's above, and you know where earth is. With a novel like Wuthering Heights, with the pronouncements of both Heathcliff and Catherine, we have reversal and subversion of dominant traditions. So according to, in one of the chapters by those two critics, Wuthering Heights is read as a rebellious reversal of the Bible and John Milton's Paradise Lost. Miltonic elements in Wuthering Heights. This is also how the novel is presented as full of ideas and full of controversies. Milton is an English poet, famous, and he was, he spent a substantial part of his life writing religious poetry, in which he was trying to, kind of explain the ways of God to people. He wrote Paradise Lost, which is a religious epic, a very long one, and it focuses on the fall of Adam from heavens, of course, and from God's favors, on account of him, plucking the forbidden tree at the insinuations of his wife Eve. So among the Miltonic elements in Bronte's novel are the links between Heathcliff and Milton's fallen angel Satan. So Heathcliff is seen as a gift less of God than of the devil, if you still remember what Earnshaw said about him. So, and almost all the characters compare him to the devil. And we have, of course, examples. To Isabella, his eyes are the clouded windows of hell, from which a fiend looks out. So he is more or less like Milton's Satan or devil. So Milton's Satan is a literary antecedent, like the Byronic hero villain was. We have a shift here when we talk about this biblical narrative about the fall of man from heaven and the and women being a contributing factor. Everybody since antiquity is blaming Eve for the downfall of Adam. Obviously, female critics or feminist critics are against this version of history. They would say, no, this is not what happened. actually they have a revised myth, and this revised myth, there is the revised myth of the fall of woman. They blame it all on Adam, not on Eve. So they read Wuthering Heights as a revised myth of the fall of woman, a fall from hell to heaven. See, a fall into culture. So the novel becomes a rebelliously topsy-turvy retelling of Milton's and Western culture's central tale of the fall of woman and her shadow self, Satan. Okay, so everybody else, biblical narratives and traditional narratives tell us that the fall was from heaven to earth. But women critics and feminist critics say that Wuthering Heights is a proof that the fall was not the fall of man, it was the fall of woman, and it's a fall from hell to heaven, a fall into culture. That, yeah, they are trying to say that this fall was good news after all. Those feminist critics would give women characters in Wuthering Heights, significant roles. I mean, traditionally, the focus was on Heathcliff, but not anymore with, Gilbert and Gobar, those feminist critics. They believe that Heathcliff is not as important as Catherine, for example. For them, Wuthering Heights becomes a powerful text of feminist revolt. So, and they say, who revolted? It's obviously the one who revolted was not Heathcliff. The one who revolted was Catherine. Remember when she fell in love with somebody that her family wouldn't approve of? When she comes back to him, it is true that she got married to Edgar, but she always had this kind of love for this guy. Also, one of her manifestation of her revolution would be the idea, would be the dream of being in heaven, but weaving her way down to earth because she didn't like it over there. So Catherine becomes the protagonist of a female buildings roman, with Heathcliff now of most interest as her alter ego, her true double. So he is now being, given a second place, a secondary place. The focus with feminist critics is on Catherine. So those feminist critics view the novel as an inversion, a turning up or down of the hierarchies of heaven and hell, and a valorization of natural passions. So you don't have those established hierarchies anymore. Heaven is not where it is, and hell is not where it is. We have reversals and we have inversions and subversions of those hierarchies, all done by Emily Brontë in Wuthering Heights. So if Catherine's view that heaven did not seem to be my home, like I said, this would subvert religious hierarchies. It also seems to undermine Victorian idealization of the domestic. So we're very far away from him. The ideas are very strange. The ideas are very daring. The ideas are very revolutionary. Again, we're very far away from the views of women and their domestic roles. So we don't have that anymore. The idea that women should remain within the domestic sphere and behave in a genteel manner is no longer there. We have, through the novel, this transforming effect upon the world through the domestic world best suited to the. No, we don't have that anymore. So as you can see, what we see in the novel in Wuthering Heights would be kind of challenge women's roles, whether those roles were kind of imposed on her through religion, education, or even politics. We have a subversion of those religious, educational, and political agendas. This is, a variation on what we've been talking about, where, of course, you don't treat women badly and you get away with it. This happened with Bertha, you still remember, in Jane Eyre. And this is happening here with Catherine. And the second generation, they are more daring than ever. They are more courageous and even more violent than again, if she cannot achieve what she wants, I mean, Catherine, she would find perhaps their salvation in death. And this is very rebellious. It's either Heathcliff or death. So this is also very rebellious because we know who Heathcliff is as a society, as a white Victorian society. So the novel as a whole is an enactment and an embodiment of a conflict, or the conflict between nature and civilization. Nature, which is our true home, while civilization is whatever is imposed on us from abroad. So, like I said, Wuthering Heights dramatizes a struggle between nature and civilization. And this is also romantic, because the Romantics believe that nature is superior to culture. The rest will focus on the idea of readership. Who reads the novel and how they read it and why they read it. I think we're all. Do you have any questions so far before I move to this idea of reading?
No, Doctor.
So domestic readings of Wuthering Heights. How do people at the time and even beyond how they read the novel. And by reading the novel, we don't mean, of course, the organized noise that people make. By reading, we mean interpreting. And of course, when you interpret a novel, you normally link it and kind of map it to whatever happens to you. If you are a 19th century reader, you would link it to Victorian ideals. If you are a 21st century reader, you would also link it to whatever happens around you. Again, one of those readings that has perhaps stood the test of time would be the idea of nature and nurture, or nature and civilization, where people are talking about nature, pure nature, the nature of the romantics, and the fact that when people are born, uh, people are innocent and pure, and this is the state of nature. But when they grow up and they have to go to school, they have to have ideas of uh, um, behaving in accordance with society's norms. They become corrupt and they lose their innocence. And this is the level or the stage of civilization that lots of people don't like. So when one or another interpretation of the novel can be in terms of genre. The novel is seen as tracing a gradual progression away from the Gothic mode of the first generation. Gothic, may I remind you, has to do with whatever is weird, whatever is violent, and whatever is strange and uncanny. The second generation would perhaps be an enactment of the realistic or the realist domestic fiction that came to dominate the Victorian novel. So the first generation story is characterized by domestic violence. If you still remember, we have a forced marriage where Catherine was forced to get married to Edgar. You have incarceration, the fact that we have examples of she herself had to stay in the Granges for 2 weeks against her will because she broke her leg. The second generation story ends with this withdrawal of the hero and heroine into the nuclear family. So again, we don't have this big amount of violence. And we're moving to the world of Thrush Cross Grange, and we all agreed on the fact that this is more peaceful, more organized, and more civil. Again, you have this confusion between whatever is romantic and whatever is realistic. So the categories of romance and realism, home and abroad, coexist as much as they compete within the novel. Again, this part is about uh, the domestic reading of Wuthering Heights. I'm going to stop on this note because obviously I've been talking for so long. We're done with Wuthering Heights. What I intend to do next time is to take perhaps 5 to 10 minutes talking about the reading of Wuthering Heights. And then we move to the sign of 4, inshallah. Okay, everyone? Do you have any questions before we call it a day?
Thank you.
No, doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Doctor,
Yes. Yes.
I have a question.